Okay, so the question is, will 35-inch tires fit on the Gladiator Sport in stock configuration? Now, everybody knows that the Rubicons have a little bit more fender clearance and a slightly taller suspension, so they fit 35s pretty well. But will the Sport model, or I guess the Overland for that model, can you put 35s on here? Well, we're getting ready to find out, because I took the 35s off the JL Wrangler before I turned it in, and I kept them, put them in the barn, getting ready to go get them out. Now, when I measured this truck right here, this is a Sport model with a max towing package. I measured it in a couple of different places, just in case my driveway was a little bit uneven. And what I'm coming up with is that the back sits about 1.5 inches higher than the front. So theoretically, if you put a 1.5 inch spacer up in the front, the truck would sit perfectly level. But I don't want it to sit perfectly level. I want it to have a little bit of rake in the back because, if you're hauling and towing, you don't want your headlights shining up in the sky. So I'm going to put the 35s on here stock. We'll see how it fits. And then I have a rough country spacer kit over here. Now these are just the 3/4 inch ones. Those are just 3/4 of an inch thick. But what I noticed is that the way they're designed, you can stack those. See, they stack together. So you could make it a 1.5 inch kit pretty easily if you wanted to. Just order 2 sets of these. They're only 30 bucks, pretty cheap. So you could do that, but I'm gonna try and just do 3/4 of an inch on each side for a little bit more space up front. And I got a little trick I'm gonna try to make installation go much faster. So we'll see how that goes. But first, let's go get the 35s out, put them on the front. Since the front sits lower than the back, I'm gonna put them on the front because if there's gonna be any rubbing, this is where it's gonna happen. So let's see what happens when we put the 35s on here and check it out. And just for the record, the Gladiator factory wheels are the same specs as the ones on the JK and the JL. 17 by 7.5 width with a positive 44.45 millimeter offset. Now, the engineers kept saying that the Gladiator was going to have higher load capacity since it's a pickup truck, but I can't find that information actually stamped on here anywhere, unless it's just coded in one of these numbers, and I don't know how to read it. But let's put them on the scales here, and we'll see how much they weigh. All right, looks like we got 56.5 pounds. So that's about the same as the JL that I measured before. Man, I'll tell you what, those things are heavy. So I re-weighed the factory wheel and tire again a couple more times, and it actually weighs about 55 pounds. So a factory Gladiator wheel plus tire from a Sport, 55 pounds. You can tell I'm out of breath because these bad boys right here are 95 pounds. This is a American Outlaw, well, wrong side. American Outlaw Lone Star wheel, and I got that from Discount Tire. Of course, that's the Patagonia MT and a 315/70, and this combo right here goes 95 pounds. So if you do this, obviously you're adding a significant amount of unsprung weight to your Jeep, and that's the reason why your gas mileage, your braking performance, your acceleration, everything takes a dump when you put 35s on there. But I'm getting ready to do the other side to make it match, but you can see the difference already between the stock and the 35. Now, it might look like there's plenty of room in here, guys, but I don't know. The part I'm really worried about is right down here on this air dam. We're gonna have to pay a close attention to that when I go to turn here in just a minute. But let me put the one on the other side and then we'll check it. Okay, there we go. So just for the purposes of test fitting, hopefully this camera will focus. That's what a 35 looks like on a stock front end on a Gladiator. It actually doesn't look too bad, but like I said, I think that when I start this up, we're going to have some rubbing issues up front. The other thing I've noticed is that since this model, this trim with the max tow, has the wide axles, I've got a lot more tread sticking out than what I had on the JL. The JL, the axles were more narrow. They kind of kept a lot of that tread inside. So that's a consideration too, because some states, this would be illegal. Not to mention you're going to throw rocks and everything all over your paint. So that's something else to keep in mind. but it doesn't look too bad. I just wonder how the clearances are going to be up front. So let's check that out. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. So the tire has made contact with the front air dam. You can kind of see where it's touching right there. So unfortunately, this is part of the, see, all of this is for fuel economy, that whole thing, and I would like to remove it, but the problem is that the back side of it is actually, it's all one piece, and the back side of it is the cover that protects your fog lights to keep mud and everything from getting up in there. So I'm kind of hesitant to just take it off. So we may, if these spacers don't give us enough room down here, we may end up just having to do some trimming, but definitely hits over there. Now let's check this side and see where we're at. See if I can get in here and get a decent angle. Oh yeah. Yeah, there's plenty of room back there at the control arm, so the rear is not going to be an issue. Looks like the rear is not an issue at all. It's just up here in the front. Turn the other way and check. Yeah, same kind of deal. I mean, you got plenty of clearance. There's plenty of clearance at that control arm back there. So it does look like the only issue is going to be right over here with this air dam. So interesting. So it looks like that if we just came in here with like a Dremel tool or a skill saw or something, some kind of a tool to cut, and if we just took this lower portion out, then I think we would be okay. Once I put the 3/4 inch spacers in, it's going to raise, it's kind of hitting right here a little bit, but it's going to raise it up enough that I don't think that that'll be a problem. So if we just trimmed right here, I think it would be okay. At least on the road it would be okay. Now if you go off-road, you know, it's a different ball game, but if you're not doing any hardcore rock crawling, you could run 35s stock and just do very minor trimming here, and I think you'd be okay. Well, let's put the spacers in and see if that makes any difference. Well, my little trick that I thought was going to be so smart didn't work. It did work several years ago for me when I had a WJ, I think it was a WJ, might have been a ZJ, I can't remember. I had a couple of Grand Cherokees with solid axles and it worked. Basically what I did was I put the coil spring tool on there and just snugged it up, and then I unbolted the shocks and jacked the body or the frame up, and as the frame went up, the spring obviously could not go up with it because the tool was holding it in place. And so I just jacked the body up enough to slide my spacer in, lowered it back down, bolted the shock back up, and was good to go. It was a piece of cake. But the JT Gladiator and the JL set up a little bit differently. You got this really long piece here with the bump stop in the bottom, and you have to get the spring to clear that. So it didn't really work out the same way. So pretty much had to end up disconnecting all this suspension stuff, and we're going to do it the old-fashioned way, I guess. Heck, it was worth a shot. All right, guys, there it is. This is the 35s on the Gladiator that took a little bit of time to do because we ended up having to do a little cosmetic surgery, as you can see right here. Those are the little air dam pieces that go up underneath the fog lights. Yeah, right in there. Had to trim those off with an air tool because that was the spot where the tire was rubbing. And like I mentioned, I didn't want to completely get rid of these things because they also function as covers for the fog lights to keep mud and snow and junk up out of there. You know, you don't want that stuff up in your fog light wiring. So I didn't want to get rid of this completely, but by trimming that, it gave me just enough clearance here for the 35s to work. So that's the only spot we had to trim, and I guess technically you could say that 35s would fit on a stock Gladiator with just some minor trimming. Now in the back, everything's working out perfect, but it is pretty close in here. I would say there's probably about 2 inches of space right there. So my concern is if you loaded the bed down really heavy, of course, as the suspension compresses, the axle goes a little bit backward, you know what I'm saying? That's how the control arm swing on the back is like this. So the more you load this bed down, the closer that distance is going to get. So I'll have to keep an eye on this. Right now it's perfectly fine, but I'll keep an eye on that. And you know, this is definitely the most tire you would want to put on a stock sport or overland. It does work out fairly easily, but that's you know, the most you would want to go. I think next time around I'm either going to do a full-blown lift kit or go slightly smaller in tire, because you know, like I said, it's going to work fine, but if you go off-road and start flexing this thing out, probably going to have some really close tolerances in there. So anyhow, there she is. Let me get a view of the other side. Back up here and try to get a full view of it. So I think it looks pretty good. You know, the Gladiator has those black Jeep emblems and dark colored accents all over it. So I think those wheels look pretty good on there. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Now, of course, like I mentioned, these are the wide track axles, and so the tires do stick out a little bit farther. I really need to get those running boards on there to help prevent rocks from hitting the door. But I mean, the stance is not bad. It's not like skateboard looking, you know. It's not overly, you know, offset. It's not bad. I'll get used to it, I'm sure, and it'll be just fine. Kind of the same on this side. And one of the reasons that I wanted to try and get away with as little lift as possible this time is because this truck rides so good. It rides so much better than the Wrangler. And I didn't want to ruin the ride quality. You know, the Wrangler was already more stiff and choppy when it was stock. And then after I put that 2.5-inch lift on there, it kind of threw the geometry off, and you could kind of feel the yaw and twist of the body as you went around curves. The geometry was just off, and you could tell it. I got used to it, but I never was totally happy with it. And this thing just drives so good and handles and rides so good, I didn't want to ruin that. So for now, I just wanted to get away with as little as I could get away with to fit these tires. And I went with a polyurethane spacer up there instead of steel to kind of keep things a little bit softer. So I think this will work out great. When I do get around to doing a full-blown lift kit, I'm probably going to go for a coil kit. But the thing about it is I ordered this max tow package specifically because it's got the heavier payload. And so when I do get a coil spring lift kit, I have to do my homework and make sure that the spring rates are exactly the same or more than what's already on here stock, because I don't want to lose any payload in towing. That's the whole purpose of getting this particular package. So that'll be on down the road, but there's a look at it. If you're thinking about putting 35s on one of these, but you really don't want to do a suspension lift, there you go. Proof that it does work. All right, guys, I'm going to go do something with these factory tires, put them away and store them. And once again, we got some storms rolling in, so I better finish up and get in the house. But I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching.